Welcome to the IAA Policy and Leadership Forum, and join us in celebrating the Investment Advisor Association's 85th anniversary. The IAA was founded July 27, 1937, as the Investment Counsel Association of America, to educate the public as to the industry's critical function and establish high ethical standards in serving their clients. Over the years, standards pioneered by the ICAA served as the basis for laws and regulations governing the conduct of investment advisors. In 2005, the ICAA became the Investment Advisor Association to better reflect its mission of serving the industry's business and policy needs. Today, there are close to 15,000 investment advisory firms who manage $128.4 trillion in assets for 64.7 million clients. For 85 years, the IAA has engaged in powerful advocacy and provided crucial connections and essential expertise to advisors to help you effectively and efficiently advance your firm's goals. And we look forward to continuing to do so for years to come.
Please welcome to the stage Karen Barr, the IAA's President and CEO, and Yvette Garcia, Managing Director and General Counsel of Bessemer Trust and the IAA's Chair of the Board.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome you to the IAA's Policy and Leadership Forum on the occasion of the IAA's 85th anniversary. It is truly wonderful to see all of you here in person, especially after so long on Zoom, and to welcome you to Washington, D.C., my hometown.
Good afternoon, and it's also my pleasure to welcome all of you to the IAA's Policy and Leadership Forum. This reimagined event was designed to bring you, our industry leaders, together to focus on important policy issues and advocate for our firms and our clients. As we all know, these are very interesting times in so many ways. We have a shifting policy landscape. We're dealing with new technologies, the lingering effects of the pandemic, war in Ukraine, and difficult market and economic conditions. But we're very fortunate to have gathered some preeminent voices to join us and share their insights on how best to navigate this moment.
And I also, in addition to those challenges, just want to note that we're thinking of folks in Florida facing the hurricane. I know some of our members and their families have been evacuated, so I'm hoping for their safety at this time. As we celebrate our 85th anniversary, I'll note that many of the themes and challenges that we face, including those that Yvette mentioned, are not that different since the IAA's inception in 1937. In 1938, at our first annual conference, and you see the agenda up here, we were talking about professional responsibility and ethics, fiduciary duty. We were talking about tax policy, fiscal policy, and a potential game-changing wave of new regulation. And we were talking about innovation and disruption in our industry and investing. The automobile, for example. The more things change, the more they remain the same. The investment advisor community can be proud of how it has handled the challenges of change and uncertainty over both the last 85 years and the last few years. You have adapted and innovated, and yet you've also been a steady guiding hand for your clients, providing crucial advice during uncertain times.
So as Karen noted, the IAA continues to evolve and a few things have changed. This meeting, for example, has a new name and a heightened policy lens. And we've also paired it with our Advisor Advocacy Day, which we've typically held in June. So today, we will focus our sessions on policy, and beginning with Karen's fireside chat with SEC Chair Gary Gensler. Following that, we'll hear from some industry leaders on navigating the current policy and market forces shaping our environment. Later this afternoon, Congressman Jim Himes will join us to talk about the upcoming elections and how they can impact investment advisors and the House Financial Services Committee. And we'll also be discussing the retirement savings gap and regulatory and legislative developments on that front. And tomorrow, we will make our annual trek to Capitol Hill and do our very best to educate Congress about our industry. We'll seek to influence debate and help shape legislation that will impact certainly our firms and our clients. And then Friday, we'll conclude with a focus on leadership with our ever popular breakout sessions, which provide us all with a wonderful opportunity to have some candid conversations. And then we'll also have a panel with some university experts who will share their perspectives with us on how best to successfully recruit talent and retain that talent for our firms. We did want to take a quick moment to thank those who were part of the planning committee for the forum. Their names are up on the screen, and we're incredibly grateful for the terrific program that they've put together.
I also want to take a moment to thank our speakers and facilitators and our fabulous Board of Governors who met here this morning, and to thank my colleagues, the dedicated professionals who make this organization what it is. Please join me in thanking them for the important work they do on behalf of our organization.
And finally, I would like to thank this year's conference sponsors. Fidelity is our blue chip sponsor, a strong supporter of the organization and of Advocacy Day. We also have our strategic partners, ACA Group and SS&C Advent, who are also important supporters of IAA. And today's welcome reception is sponsored by SS&C Advent. I would also like to thank another longtime supporter of the IAA, Berkshire Global Advisors, and they are our Wi-Fi sponsor for the conference. So please join me in a round of applause in thanking our sponsors.
Thank you, Yvette. At this time, I'd like to ask Gail Bernstein, our General Counsel, and Neil Simon, our Vice President of Government Relations, to join us on the stage. Welcome. We are going to spend a few minutes talking about the IAA's policy in this ever-changing policy landscape. The Investment Advisor Association's mission is to advance the interests of your member firms, both on specific policy issues and in the public eye. Our policy priorities are developed to ensure that the environment for all of you and your clients are both effective and efficient and protects investors. We key our policy positions off big picture themes and objectives, with the active input and involvement of our board and our many committees and members. We'll touch on some of these overarching themes as we discuss specific issues. So Neil, I'm going to turn to you first. We have a lot going on Capitol Hill, and I know you're going to talk about it later this afternoon. What are the two most immediate issues that we're focused on?
Okay, I'll be fast. Two things. First, retirement savings legislation. IAA strongly supports efforts to enhance the retirement savings for American taxpayers, and for that reason, we are supporting what is called the Secure Act 2.0, bipartisan legislation. It has already passed the House. The House-passed bill, among other things, increased the age for required minimum distributions from 72 to 75, allowed 403B plans to invest in CITs, increase the IRA catch-up provisions, lots of good things. The bill has now moved over to the Senate. It went to two Senate committees, the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, as well as the Senate Finance Committee, which is the tax writing committee. They have marked up their pieces of the legislation, and it will be merged by leadership into the Secure Act 2.0 before it goes to the Senate floor. And we are strongly supporting the Senate acting on this bill in this Congress, and not in the waning legislative days before the elections, in the lame duck session that will occur after the election, and we need your help on that. Second issue, AML, anti-money laundering. Who figured it would be in the National Defense Authorization Act, a must-pass piece of legislation that is now pending before the Senate? In the House, AML provisions were added to the bill that would apply anti-money laundering to all financial intermediaries. Why? Because they're trying to get at any money hidden away by Russian oligarchs. It was directly in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In any case, that bill is now in front of the Senate, and we are trying to persuade the Senate that there's no reason for those AML provisions to be in there. First of all, FinCEN, Treasury's Financial, I wrote it down because I never get it right, Financial Crimes Enforcement Network already has it on their agenda for rulemaking. And frankly, they have the experience, they have the expertise to figure out how broadly it should be applied and what the contours would be. And as you all know, before a client gets to you, they've already passed through a number of different doorways, and those folks are already required to do AML due diligence. So the duplication is unwarranted. We're trying to convince Congress, let FinCEN do the job, drop the AML provisions from the National Defense Authorization Act.
And in fact, we've been educating the Treasury Department for almost 20 years about who investment advisors are and the low anti-money laundering risks that they present. The Treasury Department has reached out to us again recently for more information, and we'll be meeting with them shortly on it. And I did want to note on the retirement legislation, we are laser focused in reviewing retirement legislation that has come up over the last several years to make sure that policymakers do not put their finger on the scale in favor of one investment strategy over another. For example, passive over active, or index products or annuities or any kind of particular investments over another. We have been successful in getting some of these provisions out of some of the draft bills before they even make it to be introduced. So Neil, with that, we are amping up our pressure here on Capitol Hill. What can members do to get involved?
Okay, we need you to be engaged. Respond to our member alerts asking you to use the Take Action Now feature of our website. We've put out a Take Action Now alert on the AML in the National Defense Authorization Act. If you haven't already responded, please do so. Participate in Advisor Advocacy Day tomorrow. It's a tremendous and important opportunity. And third, join our Advocacy Council. You all have applications for it on your tables. This is going to become the grassroots engine for our advocacy work. It will help set the agenda. There is no fee to join the council. You have to be a member firm, but if you're a member firm, your employees can join the Advocacy Council. They get a Dynamite 5 for Friday newsletter, keeping them abreast of what is going on of importance on the Hill, and they're going to get regular briefings. So please respond to the member alerts, participate in Advisor Advocacy Day, and join the council. If you fill out the application today, we'll collect it and you'll get next week's newsletter.
Yvette, do you have a few words to chime in here?
Yeah, really just to echo after hearing everything that Neil just said in the last couple of minutes, I think all of us should be signing that application pretty fast. It's certainly an opportunity for all of us to amplify our voices and to stay current on developments on the Hill, which certainly impact our businesses and our clients. And the more of us that can combine our forces and our voices, I think the better chance we have to be constructive in the process.
Thanks, Yvette. Gail, these past 2 years have seen a wave of regulation and rules and proposals coming out of the SEC and other regulatory agencies. They're going to have an enormous impact on the landscape for investment advice and asset management. Each of these rulemakings alone would be a big deal, but the cumulative impact of them is significant. How unusual has this period been in your experience?
Let me say first, Karen, that wave is a euphemism. This is truly unprecedented. We haven't seen this number and the speed of regulatory proposals since the financial crisis, and maybe not even then. We are extensively engaged with the regulators on every important proposal that touches on investment advisors, not only at the SEC, but also at the Labor Department and at the CFTC. We are also pushing back on the SEC's current process, which is giving very, very short timelines, and it's just not reasonable to expect thoughtful and meaningful and thorough input during that time. We're also asking the SEC to step back and more holistically consider how these proposals and final rules interact with one another, and how, to kind of really consider seriously the cumulative impacts of these regulations on advisors of all types and sizes.
Yvette, do you want to chime in there on the cumulative impact?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly significant and concerning, and it impacts advisors of all sizes and areas of focus. And I think, we're certainly really appreciative to the IAA for their leadership on this issue, both in the comment letters that they submit, in the engagement with policymakers and in the press. And I think we are starting to see some traction, and I think we just need to keep that issue front and center.
Thanks, Yvette. Gail, are any broad themes emerging from this wave of regulation?
Yeah, definitely. First, we're seeing a troubling move away from the traditional way that the SEC has approached regulation of advisors, which is a principles-based, flexible, evergreen approach to something that is more prescriptive, and including outright prohibitions. And this is one of our overarching themes that we keep pressing back on the SEC about. We're seeing a blurring of the lines between broker-dealers and advisors. This has increased since the adoption of the Standard of Conduct package, which includes Reg BI, as you know, and the fiduciary interpretation. And one of our priorities at the IAA is to keep reminding the SEC of the important distinctions that there are between broker-dealers and advisors, and to keep acknowledging and recognizing the key differences.
We're also seeing some areas where the SEC may not be striking the right balance in the amount and granularity of information that is decision useful for clients. What do you see there, Gail?
Yeah, we're seeing this quite a lot, and I'd like to just share two examples. One in the cybersecurity space and one in the ESG space. First, in the ESG proposal, the SEC is calling for disclosure of such a substantial amount of information that we are concerned that investors could actually be misled by what may be an inordinate focus on ESG, and perhaps not enough of a focus on things that might be even more material than ESG. We're also concerned generally about information overload and confusion of investors, and frankly that they're just going to be overwhelmed. The same is true with respect to a pretty sweeping cybersecurity proposal. The SEC is again seeking public disclosure of so much information, and here it's not just a question of overload and feeling overwhelmed. Members are also concerned about providing a roadmap, frankly, about their risks and how they manage their risks to bad actors. So there are a lot of important issues here.
Yvette, do you have a few thoughts on the cybersecurity front?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all fiduciaries, and we obviously are focused on information security, and that's reflected in our budgets and in our headcount. But when you get into time frames like 48 hours, that's a really short amount of time when you as a business are focused on investigating and remediating. And I think this is an example of one particular proposal that has, probably an inordinate impact on small businesses. So, coupled with the other points that I think the IAA is highlighting in its engagement, I think, the relevance of the information, the security of the information, and how it impacts the burdens on small advisors are important points to continue to highlight. And so, thank you for all of that.
Thanks, Yvette. Gail, what do you see happening with the SEC in terms of principles-based regulations versus a more prescriptive approach?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think one of the proposals that's getting a lot of press attention right now is the proposal to regulate the conduct of private fund advisors. And as I mentioned before, it would impose prescriptive requirements and outright bans on not only activities but also negotiated contractual provisions. We strongly oppose this approach. The check-the-box requirements don't really fit the advisor model. They don't allow for organic changes and organic developments, and rules only fit the conduct that they fit, and the advisor landscape is extremely diverse and broad. It's also important to note that the SEC already has the tools to enforce the laws that are on the books and to bring enforcement actions, and it certainly is not shy about doing so. And we don't think that the SEC really needs these strict prohibitions to be able to enforce what it wants to enforce. And we think that they will have a lot of negative implications for investors and the markets.
Thanks, Gail. And there are a lot of initiatives coming down the pike quickly. We expect the SEC to finalize cybersecurity, private funds, ESG, the trade settlement date T+1 in the near term, perhaps by the end of the year or early next year. We're also expecting to see proposals come out on the custody rule, digital advice, human capital, and perhaps crypto. But I will note in all of this advocacy, the most important participants are you, our members. Through your participation in all of these committees, forums, meetings, you got our work on behalf of the industry. Please let us know what is important to you, and we can take it up.
So please join the Advocacy Council.
Thank you, Yvette. Thank you to Gail, Neil, and Yvette